Hello and welcome to Wisconsin in Focus, powered by the Center Square. I'm Dan McCaleb, Vice President of News and Content at the Franklin News Foundation, publisher of the Center Square Newswire service. Joining me again today is the Center Square's Wisconsin correspondent, Benjamin Yount. A belated Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, Ben.
Well, it will hopefully be a better 24. I'm hoping that all of the dogs make it through this year and that my children decide to move out of my house because the grocery bills are becoming untenable. I had to make 3 different Christmas meals. We had the breakfast, then we had the lunch, then there was the dinner, then there still was an appetite for snacks afterwards. These kids are eating me out of house and home.
Well, you sound like the Hobbits in that movie series where there's like 6
second breakfasts. Yes. Yeah.
Ben, the Wisconsin Supreme Court shortly before Christmas struck down the legislative maps in the state. You've written some stories about that. Give our listeners an update on what's next.
Yeah, this was the big story heading into Christmas Day. The Friday before Christmas, the Supreme Court, which is now a liberal majority court, ruled that the maps that were used for the 2022 election, and only the 2022 election, were unallowed, unconstitutional. The argument was based on non-contiguous districts, municipal islands, little sort of dangles that hung off of some of the legislative districts. And the court essentially said, nope, that's not allowed, even though 3 of the 4 liberal majority justices signed off on those very same kind of dangles just a year ago. But what this means is that we're going to have a brand new legislative map, not congressional, but legislative map for the 2024 elections, and it's going to happen very, very quickly. This ruling didn't surprise anyone. Has been said several times over the past days here in Wisconsin. There is a reason that Wisconsin's race for the Supreme Court was the most expensive ever in the history of the United States, because this is a race that could decide who controls the legislature in a swing state like Wisconsin, as well as deal with things like right to work and Act 10, which dealt with teachers unions and abortion and concealed carry and all manner of other sort of liberal progressive wish list items. But yeah, not a surprising ruling, but it is a substantial ruling nonetheless.
So the legislature is directed to go back and redraw the maps, is correct? And then the Republican-controlled legislature, and then Democratic Governor Tony Evers would have to sign the new maps. What are the chances that's going to happen anytime soon?
About the same chances that I get to play center field for the Brewers on opening day next year. Less than 0. The process is supposed to be, and that's a key word, supposed to be, that the legislature draws the maps. If you take a look at how this is constitutionally prescribed, if you take a look at how this happens in every single state after the census, it is the legislature that comes together and puts together the map. Sometimes they'll have public hearings. There may be in certain states a commission that helps with this, but it is the legislature that gets the power to draw the maps. Here in this order, the court has opened the door to outside experts, a couple of university professors, one of them from California, who are likely going to draw the maps. Because, again, the story we had this week, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos said absolutely the legislature is going to take a crack at drawing these new maps, eliminate those municipal islands, try and figure out a way to satisfy the court's concerns. Governor Evers has pretty much already promised that he will veto it. The interesting question is, will this be a separation of power question? The court is not supposed to draw the maps. They can sign off on a map, but they're not supposed to draw the maps from scratch. And then you get into other questions about, is there an appeal to the United States Supreme Court? After all, this ruling was based entirely on the Wisconsin Constitution. And you always have, whenever you're dealing with redistricting, Dan, you got to remember that political gerrymandering is absolutely 100% legal, kosher, acceptable, blessed. It has been the pattern. The legislature is a political body elected to make political decisions. And so a political outcome on a political map is not unexpected. Supreme Courts are not supposed to be political. But while political gerrymandering is allowed, racial gerrymandering is not. And there is a focus on how to redraw Wisconsin's political map without violating the Voting Rights Act. Remember, while this is about a 50-50 state when it comes to statewide elections, Democrats in Wisconsin have huge majorities in Madison and Milwaukee. And how you split that majority up so that you have a 50-50 balance in the state legislature is going to be difficult. The words pizza, pie, and octopus are being tossed about because that's what everyone expects the map to sort of look like. Governor Evers, just to add one more layer to this, he suggested a people's map back in 2021 after the 2020 census. That map actually got rejected by the U.S. Supreme Court because it violated the racial components of the Voting Rights Act. He tried to draw an extra majority-minority district. He tried to give black voters an extra seat, and the Supreme Court said, nope, you can't do that because you can't racially gerrymander. Now, this all happens very quickly. The process actually began the day after Christmas. The legislature has until the 12th of January, so about 2 weeks, to get a proposed map to the court. Then there's some arguing, there's some briefs filed, but because of Wisconsin's primary election schedule, the new maps for Wisconsin have to be finalized by about the second week of February. So we got this ruling here the day before everyone left for Christmas, and we're going to get brand new maps a couple of days before Valentine's Day. That is a huge change, but that's what's prescribed. So it is going to be, as one of these states' elections commissioners put, it is going to be a fascinating couple of days here in Wisconsin.
Well, let's say, Ben, we only have a couple minutes left, but let's say the Republican-controlled legislature draws new maps, Governor Evers vetoes them, uses this independent commission that Republicans don't like, but because the Democratic governor pushes it through, this is the Wisconsin Supreme Court, which is now controlled by Democrats, liberals gives it the okay. There's no way Republicans are going to let that go without a court battle, right? So how is that going to happen by February?
Well, this is the thing, is that it's going to be very, very truncated because this is a ruling based on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. The avenues to appeal directly to the United States Supreme Court for Republicans here are limited. You don't just get to go, the United States Supreme Court is not a mom or a nanny. You don't get to turn around and say, well, he took my toy, make him give me my toy back. That's not the way the court system is supposed to work. That if there is no federal issue for the United States Supreme Court to decide, there's no appeal to the United States Supreme Court. That's why the end product, the question about what the map actually looks like, voting rights, who does what, because there is an opportunity here for Democrats to overplay their hand, that in order to get a legislative majority, the experts, and it would be experts brought in by the Supreme Court, not a commission. The governor rejected a commission idea earlier in the year, but these experts are going to have to gerrymander the map to favor Democrats. It's an almost 2-to-1 legislative majority for Republicans. Probably not going to flip the assembly, maybe the Senate under the most extreme cases. But this is going to be an issue where the map is going to look radically different. And anytime you make a radical change, you open yourself up to a question about fairness, a question about racial representation, a question about compact, contiguous. There are so many. I mean, you could do 2 hours just on the specifics of redistricting. And, it is how this gets wrapped up by early February. I'm just along for the ride. I'm just here to write the book report the day after.
And I'm sure our listeners can look forward to many updates from you, Ben, on this ongoing story. But that's all the time we have today. For Ben Yount, I'm Dan McCaleb. Please subscribe. Thank you for listening.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the nonprofit Franklin News Foundation is bringing you straight news journalism through the Center Square, reporting on state authorities and publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. By supporting the Center Square, you can track politicians' use of taxpayer money and demand transparency from elected officials. This is how we can equip everyday Americans to hold their government accountable. Become a supporter of Franklin today at franklinnews.org/donate.